The Boy Who Held the Sun. Chapter 1. As Green as Emeralds. Inky's eyes shimmered like emeralds as he gazed into the night sky. A cool breeze danced through his thick, curly hair, whispering secrets only the stars could understand. Tonight was no ordinary night. For the first time in his life, Inky would witness the passing of the elder star, Neri. A celestial event so rare it occurred only once every 2,000 years. He had grown up listening to stories of Neri, how its fiery trail weaved between galaxies, and how, whenever it appeared, the universe would shift. And a chosen one would rise. A soul destined to restore balance, to make all things new. The elders said Neri's light carried ancient wisdom, that its presence signaled a turning point for Earth and all who lived upon her. High above the sacred lands, beneath the canvas of constellations, a grand celebration began. Families and friends gathered at the golden summit, a towering cliff draped in glowing moss and illuminated by floating lanterns. From there, one had the clearest view of Neri's passage through the sky. Laughter and song echoed into the night as music swirled with the wind. The air was thick with spice and sweet fruits. Inky stood at the edge of it all, half in the joy, half in a trance, his heart tugged by something deeper than excitement. He didn't know it yet, but this would be the last night he'd ever call this place home. Chapter 2. We Feast. The scent of roasted starfruit and cinnamon root drifted through the air, carried on soft winds from the fire pits. Music floated upward, deep drums, wooden flutes, and the rhythm of hand claps echoing through the valley. Laughter rang like bells. Children chased each other through glowing grass, while elders shared stories beneath shimmering lanterns that floated above them like captured stars. Tonight, the golden summit was alive. Inky weaved through the crowd with a wide grin, his heart full. This was his favorite night of the cycle, the Festival of Neri. Not just for the cosmic wonder in the sky, but for this, the joy of belonging. He found his sister Marley sitting cross-legged beside a storyteller, her eyes wide as the old man mimicked a fire-breathing lizard using only his hands and voice. "Is that even real?" Marley whispered to Inky as he sat beside her. "In the old world, anything was real," Inky teased. Marley was younger, curious, and full of questions. Her wild braids bounced as she laughed. Not far off, Mika, Inky's mother, was tending a steaming pot of cloudfish stew, its aroma rich and savory, stirred with long crystal spoons. Her smile was gentle, her voice low and melodic, as she offered second servings to anyone nearby. Rizik, Inky's father, stood tall like a carved tree. He had once been a sky farmer, planting floating gardens in the air. Now he mostly watched, quiet but present. His eyes followed Inky often, as if he already knew this would be the last feast they'd share. "Inky!" a voice called from behind. It was Gesh, his best friend since childhood. Gesh had skin the color of warm bronze and eyes that sparkled with mischief. He wore a headdress made from river feathers and tossed Inky a piece of sunbread as he approached. "They're telling ghost stories by the fire," Gesh said with a grin. "Want to scare Marley?" "I heard that," Marley snapped, laughing. As night deepened, the feasting began in full. Tables, carved from living trees, bent gently toward the guests, holding bowls of glow melon slices dripping with nectar, sky crab legs with lemongrass, sticky rolls made from sun cane sugar, and drinks brewed with moon petal tea, which sparkled faintly when stirred. Everyone wore their finest robes, dyed in hues pulled from sunset and stone. Gold bands, crystal beads, feathers, and woven leaves shimmered under lantern light. Then came the stories. One by one, elders and travelers stood to share tales of love that defied gravity, of beasts that guarded lost cities, of the first time Neri lit up the sky. Each story wove magic into the air, passed from tongue to memory like an invisible thread. Inky sat still, soaking it all in. Every smell, every voice, every flicker of firelight on his parents' faces. Gesh leaned beside him, arms crossed, eyes half closed. "You feel it?" Gesh asked. Inky nodded, though he didn't fully understand what he was feeling. The sky above began to pulse faintly. Neri was coming. As the laughter began to settle and the last of the moon-petal tea was poured, the oldest voice in the village rose above the hum of the crowd. "Quiet now," someone whispered. "Elder Jaru is about to speak." The children shuffled close. Even the grown-ups leaned forward, their faces lit by the fire's soft glow. Elder Jaru, wrapped in a cloak of woven starlight, stood slowly from his carved stone seat. He tapped his staff once, and the flames flickered blue. "With every passing of Neri," he began, "a new cycle begins." Chapter 3. When the Light Chose Me. The fire crackled low. The wind had stilled. The drums had gone silent. Everyone was watching the sky. Neri had arrived. At first, it appeared like a thread of gold being stitched across the stars. Then, brighter, pulsing, alive, a river of celestial fire flowing across the darkness. Its tail shimmered with every color of the sun, and for a moment it seemed as if day had touched night. Gasps rose across the golden summit. Marley clung to Mika's side, eyes wide. Rizik placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and silent. Inky stood near the edge of the cliff, just beneath the high arching tree where the elders tied wishes during each festival. His heart thudded louder than the drums ever had. He wasn't sure why. Then something happened. As Neri reached its highest arc in the sky, a beam of light, a single, narrow shaft of radiant gold, broke away from the trail and fell. It didn't fall like a star, it descended like a thought, slow and silent. And it came for him. The light struck the earth gently at Inky's feet, surrounding him in a soft, humming glow. It did not burn, it breathed. Warm, like a sun-kissed breeze through the soul. The air pulsed, his chest tightened, then opened. The summit fell into stunned silence. Inky could no longer hear the crowd, or the music, or even the wind. Everything faded away as his feet left the ground, just slightly, just for a breath, and the golden light lifted him into stillness. Inside his mind, he saw a vision. Burned lands, cracked rivers, forests turned to dust, animals gone silent. Then, his hands reaching down, placing fingers into ash. From where he touched, green bloomed. Trees rose. Water flowed backward into dry beds. Flowers awakened, and over it all, the warmth of the sun, held not in the sky, but in him. When Inky opened his eyes, the light was gone. He stood alone, but not the same. Gasps rippled across the gathering. Some dropped to their knees. Elder Jaru bowed his head. Mika covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Rizik stood frozen, as if time had paused. "Inky," Gesh whispered, his voice cracked with awe. "It chose you." Inky looked down at his hands. They glowed faintly, like embers that had just been born. "I don't understand," he said quietly. Elder Jaru stepped forward, staff in hand. "You don't need to understand yet, child, but the sun does not choose lightly." The sky above returned to its quiet dark. Neri faded, its cycle completed. But for Inky, something had just begun. Chapter 4. The Weight of Light. The feast was over. The laughter had faded. The fires had burned low. But Inky couldn't sleep. He sat alone on a stone ledge near the family hut, watching the moon's reflection ripple on the lake below. His hands still glowed faintly when he closed his fists, like sunlight trapped beneath skin. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want to leave his home. He didn't want to become some story from the stars. And yet, the earth had chosen him. "Inky," came a voice behind him, soft as the wind. He turned. His mother stood barefoot, wrapped in a shawl of night-colored silk, her eyes full of both pride and sorrow. "Can I stay here?" Inky asked her, barely above a whisper. "Can I pretend it didn't happen?" Mika sat beside him and took his hand. "If you stay, the world suffers. If you go, we suffer. But life has always asked the brave to choose." He felt her thumb trace the back of his hand. "When you were born," she said, "the sun rose before the stars had set. The elders said it was a sign. I didn't believe them. I just thought you were my son." "I still am." She kissed his forehead. "You will always be. But now, you belong to more than just me." Later, back inside the home, Inky tiptoed past the glowing ember pots until he reached Marley's bedroll. She was still awake, wide-eyed, clutching a plush moon goat. "Are you leaving?" she asked. Inky sat down beside her. "Not yet." She sat up quickly. "Then I'll hide your shoes. If they can't find them, you can't go." He smiled. "That might work." "I don't want you to fix the world," she said suddenly. "I want you to stay and fix my drawings." You always make my trees look better." Inky pulled a small sketch from her bag. It was of the golden summit, sunlight scribbled overhead. He touched the sun in the corner. It began to glow softly, just for a second. Marley gasped. "Promise me you'll make the whole world beautiful like that," she said. "I'll try." Rizk sat alone in the shadow garden behind the house. He was sharpening a curved blade, though it had not been used in years. "I don't want to go," Inky said. "I know," Rizk replied. "What if I'm not enough?" Rizk put down the blade. "No one ever is, at first. But the sun didn't choose your strength. It chose your heart." He stood, walked over, and placed something in Inky's hand, a small carved disc of amber, etched with an ancient symbol. "This was given to me when I was your age," Rizk said. "It kept me safe when I journeyed through the northern ice." "I thought you never left." "There are many things you don't yet know, but you'll learn them soon, out there." Father and son stood in silence. Then Rizk said, "Come back when the trees bloom in the ashlands. That's when I'll know your journey is complete." That night, Inky finally lay down, exhausted from farewells. But his dreams were not his own. He saw blackened soil cracking in thirst, forests fallen, oceans choked in plastic nets, cities glowing with fire but empty of song. He heard the cry of a wind that had no trees to dance through. Then, his voice calling out. His hand pressed to the ground, and from the earth green returned. Vines unraveled like hope. Rain fell like forgiveness. Birds returned with song. When he woke, his pillow was damp with tears. In the distance, a rumble echoed from the horizon, too low to be thunder. The world was calling, and Inky had no choice but to answer. Chapter 5. World Inside a World. The morning came silent. No birds sang, no breeze stirred the leaves. Even the lake below the village seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself knew what was coming. Inky stood at the edge of the sacred cliff, wrapped in his departure robe, a deep green garment stitched with golden thread, the symbol of the sun glowing faintly across his back. His curls, freshly braided by Marley, caught the last warmth of their world's morning light. Behind him, the entire village had gathered to say goodbye. He turned slowly, taking it all in one last time. The glowing trees, the scent of sweet stone fruit in the wind, the soft humming of the living earth beneath his feet. Every detail etched itself into his memory. This was home, and he was about to leave it forever. Elder Jaru stepped forward first, leaning heavily on his staff. His eyes were tired, but full of purpose. "Inky," he said, "you carry not just power, but memory. The earth remembers what it once was. It is calling to you because it believes you can help it become whole again." He reached into his cloak and pulled out a small circular object, glowing amber gold. It hung from a thin chain of woven starlight. This is the solar medallion, forged in the time before forgetting. It listens to your heart. When you lose your way, it will burn brightest in the direction you must go. But it cannot make your choices for you. He placed the medallion over Inky's neck. It warmed instantly, resting gently against his chest. Let it be your compass, but not your master. Mika approached next, holding a small satchel made of sun-woven cloth. It smelled of home. I filled it with what I could, she said softly. Sunbread, root jam, moon petal tea leaves, and the seed of a golden fig. Plant it where you think beauty should return. She paused, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. When you feel alone, eat something that remembers where you came from. Inky swallowed hard. I'll come back, Mama. I know, she said with a brave smile, because the sun always rises again. They traveled by foot to the farthest point of the known land, beyond the misted mountains, past the glistening vine bridges and the deep, echoing groves. Few had ever come this far. Fewer had returned. And at the edge of everything, it waited. The Veil Gate. It looked like a tear in reality, shimmering like heat on stone. A perfect oval, taller than any man, standing between two twisted sun trees whose roots never touched. Jaru raised his staff. The portal pulsed once, then twice, then opened with a low hum, revealing the other side. It was like looking into another lifetime. There, beyond the gate, stood a world drained of life. The sky was choked in smoke. Towers of steel pierced the clouds. The ground was dry and cracked, scattered with remnants of things long abandoned. Cars rusted into the dirt, buildings eaten by vines. No color, no birds, no warmth. Inky stepped closer. The air on the other side tasted like dust. Only the chosen may pass, Jaru said, and once through, there is no returning until your work is done. Inky turned once more. Marley was crying softly. Gesh nodded bravely. Mika held her hands over her heart. Rizik stood like a stone, unblinking. I'm ready, Inky whispered, though he wasn't sure if it was true. He stepped into the light. The transition felt like falling without moving. Light folded into darkness, warmth into cold. He closed his eyes, then opened them to a silence that stretched for miles. He stood alone in the middle of a broken world. No trees, no sun, just shadows and steel. A world abandoned by wonder. And for the first time in his life, Inky felt small. The wind whispered through the crumbling shells of what was once a city. A screen on a ruined wall flickered briefly. Somewhere, a creature scurried in the dark. The solar medallion pulsed against his chest, warm and faint, like the last beat of a tired heart. Inky tightened his satchel. The journey had begun. Chapter 6. The Grey Silence. Inky had never known silence like this, not the peaceful kind from back home when birds paused to listen or the wind fell still in reverence. This silence was heavier, hollow, a silence born from abandonment. He walked alone through the ruins of what was once a city. Cracked glass crunched under his sandals. Metal groaned in the wind, bending like forgotten bones. Towering buildings, tilted, broken, burned, loomed like ghosts frozen in time. Ash floated in the air like snow, and the sky was the color of rusted iron. Every step Inky took echoed too loudly, as if the world had forgotten the sound of footsteps. He passed the husk of a yellow transport vehicle. Its doors hung open. Inside, mouldy seats, shattered screens, and a child's shoe still buckled. Nearby, a message flickered on a half-collapsed wall. "Please remain calm. Help is coming." The screen sparked once, then died. Inky's throat tightened. He wandered deeper into the city, past metal trees of twisted rebar and fields of cracked pavement, littered with glass and plastic fossils. Every so often he saw strange machines, round, wheeled or spidery, slumped over like sleeping beasts. Some hummed faintly, others blinked as if dreaming. And then he heard something. A whisper? No, a song. Faint, melodic, human. He followed it through a broken alley into the crumbled shell of a towering structure. The music played from a small device, ancient, cracked, but still holding on. It glowed blue and spun gently. The voice sang. "The flowers used to bloom here. We danced beneath the sky. But now the fields are empty, and no one says goodbye." Inky reached for the device, but as he touched it, it stopped. Silence again. Suddenly, the solar medallion pulsed against his chest. Once, twice. Then a faint tug, like a gentle pull behind his ribs. Inky followed it, heart pounding, past a torn chain-link fence and into what must have once been a park. But the trees were blackened sticks. The pond was dry. The ground was dust. Except, in the center of it all was a single flower, wilted and grey. Its petals curled like paper. The earth around it was cracked, begging. He dropped to his knees. He didn't know what to do. He had never tried. He wasn't sure if the sun inside him would listen. But he closed his eyes, placed his hand over the ground, whispered something, anything, nothing. Then he remembered Elder Jaru's words. "It listens to your heart." So he opened it. He thought of Marley's laughter, his mother's voice, his father's silence, Gesh's wild grin. He thought of the glowing trees, the song of the wind, the way the earth used to hum beneath his feet. And then, heat. A quiet light flowed from his palm into the earth. The solar medallion blazed briefly. The ground shimmered. The cracks began to seal. The flower stood taller. Its petals unfolded, color returning in a slow breath. Red, yellow, gold. And beneath it, the soil pulsed, alive. A patch of green spread outward like ripples in water. Small sprouts emerged. A beetle scurried across a stone. The wind carried a scent Inky hadn't smelled since leaving home. Life. He sat back, shaking, exhausted, awed. It had worked. From the shadows beyond the trees, something stirred. Eyes. Watching. A figure still. Human? Spirit? Survivor? Gone in an instant. Inky stood slowly. The medallion was quiet now. The test is over. But the journey had just begun. Chapter 7. The One Who Watched. The green patch still shimmered behind him, bright as a dream in a colorless world. But Inky wasn't looking at it anymore. He was staring into the distance where a figure had just vanished behind a fallen tower. It had only been there for a moment, a flicker of motion in the stillness, but it was enough to raise the hairs on his neck. He wasn't alone. For the first time since crossing the portal, Inky felt less isolated and more vulnerable. He ran. Dust flew under his feet as he followed the path between rusted husks of machines and shattered glass. The medallion thudded against his chest with every step. The figure stayed just ahead, slipping through gaps, never turning back. He saw flashes of cloth, bare feet, small shoulders. A child? "Inky!" he called out instinctively, then stopped. No one here would know his name. He paused at the base of an old building covered in vines. The figure had vanished again. The silence returned. A door creaked nearby. Cautiously, Inky pushed it open. The inside of the structure smelled of dust and time. Shelves lined the walls, torn books, shattered screens, broken toys. Everything looked untouched for decades. Then he saw it. A fresh footprint in the dust. Small, human. And beside it, drawn into the floor with a stick, a sun. Inky knelt beside it. Someone had been watching. Someone new. "Hello?" he whispered. From the shadows, a quiet cough. He turned, and there, crouched in a corner, was a child. She looked no older than 9, thin, dirt-smudged, eyes sharp and alert. Her skin was pale from lack of sun. Her clothes hung off her like rags stitched together from scraps. Around her neck was a string of trinkets, buttons, feathers, bottle caps. She didn't speak, just stared. Inky held up both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. Still nothing. "I'm trying to help the earth. I think it called me." Her eyes flicked to the solar medallion. She pointed to it. "You know this?" Inky asked. She nodded. Then she slowly stepped forward and placed something into Inky's hand. A cracked photo. It showed a family, smiling once. A mother, a father, and the same girl, younger and clean. Behind them, green fields and a blue sky. The back of the photo had words scribbled in faded ink. "We will return to the garden someday." Inky looked up. The girl had tears in her eyes, but still said nothing. She led him through the city's ruins, silent but certain. Eventually, they reached an underground shelter, half buried, filled with scavenged blankets, melted candles, drawings on walls made from coal and ash. One picture showed a boy standing beneath a golden star. Another showed plants blooming in the ruins. She had seen him before, or dreamed of him. Inky sat beside her. For the first time since arriving, he didn't feel entirely alone. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The girl pointed to her chest, then to the sky, and finally traced a circle with her finger. "A circle in the sky?" he guessed. "The sun?" She nodded, then pressed a finger to her lips, still silent. But something in her presence spoke louder than words. That night, as they huddled inside the shelter, Inky looked at the photo again. The family, the field, the dream of returning to life. The solar medallion pulsed once more, faint and steady. And Inky realized he wasn't just meant to restore nature. He was meant to restore hope. Even here, especially here, life still waited to bloom. Chapter 8. Ash and Bloom. Morning came grey, as it always did in this broken place, but today a sliver of gold warmed the edge of the skyline, the faintest kiss of light stretching across the ash-coloured rooftops. Inky sat in the underground shelter, gently unpacking his satchel. The silent girl watched from her corner, clutching the photo of her family. He laid out the moon-petal tea leaves, a small loaf of sunbread, and the golden fig seed his mother had given him. He held it up in the palm of his hand. "This is where it starts," he whispered. The girl led him to a small courtyard wedged between broken apartment walls. It was filled with debris and dust, tires, cans, shattered signs, but the soil beneath was soft from last night's rain. Inky knelt and pressed his hand to the ground. The solar medallion flared once. He planted the seed. At first, nothing. Then, light. A warm glow pulsed from the soil like a heartbeat. The cracks sealed. Shoots rose like dancers. Leaves curled open like whispered secrets. The golden fig tree sprouted, growing taller than Inky in seconds. Around it, color returned. Grass, flowers, bees. The girl stepped forward in awe. Her fingers traced the leaves like old memories. She smiled for the first time. Then they heard the sound. It started as a distant hum, a mechanical drone, low, cold, unnatural. From the far end of the street, something moved through the fog. A towering machine, nearly twice Inky's height, on 3 spiked legs. Its body was plated in rusted armor. A blinking red light swept across the courtyard like a searchlight. A voice spoke from deep inside the machine, digitized and broken. "Unauthority biodiversity detected. Initiating purge protocol." Inky stood protectively in front of the girl. The medallion at his chest pulsed like fire. The tree behind him shook, leaves whispering in alarm. "Repeat, All life is to remain neutralized. This area is non-sanctioned for natural growth. The machine raised one of its limbs, charged with crackling electricity. Inky clenched his fists. He had never fought before, never raised his hand in anger. But this wasn't anger, it was instinct. The earth itself screamed in fear. The tree, the girl, the garden, all in danger. Inky stepped forward, heart pounding. The solar medallion erupted in golden light. Energy flowed from his chest into his limbs, filling him with warmth and purpose. He reached toward the sky, and the light responded, wrapping around his hands like armor made of sun. As the machine struck, Inky thrust both palms forward. A shockwave of radiant light burst outward. The ground lit up with living vines that surged toward the machine-like whips of nature itself. The enforcer screeched. Sparks flew. The vines crushed its legs, dragged it downward, and entombed it in earth and bloom. When the dust cleared, the courtyard was silent again. The tree stood tall. The girl clutched his arm, eyes wide. And in that moment, Inky realized something important. This world wasn't just lifeless, it had been made to stay that way. Later that night, they sat beneath the fig tree. The girl, still silent, used chalk to draw a picture in the dirt. Inky, standing in the middle of a giant circle of light, plants growing beneath his feet. He looked up at the sky. The clouds above shifted slightly, letting one star peek through the blanket of smoke. It was faint, but it was there. Chapter 9. The Forgotten Ones. The deeper Inky and the silent girl traveled into the ruins, the more the world seemed to whisper with echoes. Old signs crumbled. Playgrounds were swallowed by weeds. Street lamps leaned like wilted sunflowers. At the edge of a shattered neighborhood stood a burned-out school. Its windows shattered, vines crawling over rusted desks and lockers, left open like mouths mid-scream. The girl tugged at Inky's sleeve and pointed to the collapsed gymnasium. "In there?" he asked. She nodded. The solar medallion pulsed. Inky pushed through the broken double doors into darkness. Suddenly, a whistle, a thud. A net dropped from above. He hit the ground hard. The girl shrieked. "Hold it!" a voice barked from above. "Don't let him move!" From the shadows, children began to appear. 10, 12 of them. Most were barefoot, faces smudged with soot and ash. Makeshift armor crafted from pots, pads, and pieces of old toys. Some held slingshots, others brandished sharpened sticks or flashlights with no batteries. One boy stepped forward, smaller than the rest, but all eyes followed him. He had copper-brown skin, wild black curls, and eyes like storm clouds, too serious for his age. He wore a patched hoodie, worn boots, and a piece of torn banner around his arm that read, "Stay inside." He studied Inky. "Who are you?" he asked. "Inky," he coughed, still under the net. The girl stepped forward and stood between him and the group, arms out, shaking her head. The boy squinted. "You know her?" "Yes," Inky said. "She found me." A beat. Then the boy gave a sharp whistle. Two kids pulled the net off. He stepped closer, inspecting Inky's robe, his glowing medallion, and the satchel hanging at his side. "You're not from here," the boy said flatly. "No," Inky replied. "I came through the veil, from the sacred lands." The children gasped. "Is that a place in the mountains?" one asked. "No," said another. "I think it's a dream." But Neil, the leader, stayed serious. "You talk different," he said. "And your clothes, they look like the stories." "What stories?" Inky asked. "The ones the old robots used to tell before they broke." Later that evening, Inky sat with the children in a circle inside the gymnasium. Cracks in the ceiling let in dim light. A small fire burned in the middle, carefully contained in an old metal bin. Around them, the walls were painted with hand-drawn murals, flowers, suns, stars, and names. "Tell me," Inky said, "what happened to your world?" Neil looked around at the other kids. Some nodded. "A long time ago," Neil began, "the Earth started getting sick. People used up everything: water, trees, animals. They built things that made life easier, but they forgot the cost." "Machines came," one girl added. "They said they were here to fix things, but they didn't." "They made everything worse," said another. "The skies turned dark. The ground cracked. Some people left the planet. The rest went underground. And some never came back." "We were born after that," Neil said quietly. "Most of us lost our parents to the grey." "The grey?" Inky asked. "The silence," Neil explained. "It's what we call the places where nothing grows and no one speaks. If you stay too long, you forget who you are." A hush fell over the group. One little boy whispered, "That almost happened to me, until Neil found me." Neil looked away, embarrassed. "I just kept us moving. We hide when the enforcers come. We find food in the dead places, and we try not to lose hope." Inky looked around. These children weren't just survivors. They were seeds, hidden, waiting for the right light to grow. "You're stronger than most grown-ups I've met," Inky said. That got a few proud grins. Even Neil smiled, just barely. Later, Inky sat outside the gym, staring at the stars. Or at least where stars should have been. The girl curled up beside him, her name still unknown. Neil came out, sitting next to him in silence. "I've seen others try to fix this world," Neil said. "They didn't make it." "I'm not here to fix it," Inky replied. "I'm here to heal it, one piece at a time." Neil nodded. "Then you'll need help." Inky looked over at him. "Help?" Neil stood and whistled softly. 3 kids peeked out of the gym. A girl pulled a map made from fabric and scrap paper. A boy carried an old radio pack. Another had what looked like seeds in a metal tin. "We've been collecting things," Neil said. "Memories, tools, stories, places that still dream." He looked Inky in the eye. "You're the first hope we've seen in years. And we want in." Chapter 10. Dreams of Green. The broken school had changed. Where vines once hung lifeless and concrete split under dust, green now bloomed between cracks. The children had begun planting a garden beneath the shattered skylight of the old atrium. Inky and Neil worked side by side, digging, planting, and restoring soil with care. The silent girl scattered seeds from a rusted tin. Flowers peeked up. A butterfly returned, and for the first time in years, laughter filled the hallways. "Look!" one of the children cried. "It's growing faster!" The fig tree Inky had planted days ago now stood nearly twice his height. Its golden fruit glowed softly, pulsing with warmth. The children began painting again: sunshine, birds, stars. Neil even taught a few to whistle. The silent girl drew a picture of Inky holding a ball of light in his hands, surrounded by children. She handed it to him, smiling shyly. "You should give her a name," Neil said. Inky looked at her. "How about Solin?" The girl's smile widened. She nodded. "Solin," Inky said. "Light that stays." Then the earth began to shake. A deep vibration, not natural, not right. The air turned cold. The garden wilted in an instant. "No," Inky whispered. From outside, the ground split, and a mechanized spike tore through the concrete. The children screamed. Neil grabbed Solin's hand. "Hide, now!" Metal figures stormed through the halls, enforcers larger than the last. Their eyes glowed red. Their arms unfolded into claws and plasma saws. But worse, something else came behind them. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, heavy. He wore a long, weathered coat made of scavenged fabric and steel plating. His face was half-human, scarred, sunburned, stitched with wires. The other half was a shining mask of chrome, one glowing eye rotating like a lens. His voice crackled like static wrapped in smoke. "So, the flame lives after all." Inky stepped forward, the medallion pulsing against his chest. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure smiled coldly. "I am Merc, warden of this world, keeper of the grey. I was once human, until I chose order over chaos, stillness over rot, silence over dreams. And you are the infection." He extended his hand. "Surrender, or be erased." Inky stood firm. "I won't stop. Life is meant to bloom, even here." The medallion glowed. Roots surged up from the floor, twisting toward Merc. But Merc raised his cybernetic hand, snapped his fingers. A wave of electromagnetic energy ripped through the garden. The roots withered instantly. The medallion flickered. Inky staggered. Children screamed. Enforcers closed in. "You still don't understand," Merc said, walking slowly toward him. "This world wasn't abandoned. It was designed this way." Inky tried to summon light again, but his energy had faded. The medallion sparked, but did not shine. Merc struck with a sudden blast of force. Inky flew backward, slamming into a wall. His vision blurred. "Run!" Neil shouted. Solin grabbed Inky's arm, pulling him behind rubble as enforcers swarmed the others. Children were dragged off, screaming. Neil fought back with a slingshot, cracking one machine's eye, but more swarmed in. Inky's head throbbed. His body ached. His heart shattered. He had failed. Hours passed. The machines had gone. The garden was scorched. Smoke curled into the sky. Inky lay beneath a broken window, bruised and silent. Neil crouched nearby, eyes burning with tears and rage.
"They took them,"
he whispered.
"They took all of them."
Solin sat beside them, clutching the photo of her family again, now smudged with ash. Inky looked at his hands. No glow, no warmth.
"I wasn't strong enough,"
he said. Neil stared into the distance.
"Then we get stronger."
Chapter 11. The Fire Beneath. The world had gone cold again. Smoke curled from the broken remains of the school garden. Ash covered the paintings. The fig tree lay scorched, its golden fruit blackened. Every step Inky took crunched on wilted roots and broken dreams. They were gone, taken by Merc. The laughter had ended. Inky sat by the ruined mural Solin once painted. His fists were clenched, his robes were torn, his medallion lay dull against his chest.
"I let them down,"
he whispered. "You're not the only one who's ever lost," Neil said, sitting beside him. Solin, silent as always, sat nearby, sewing a small pouch from her scarf, a place to carry seeds. Inky looked at his hands, still numb. "The medallion won't answer me," he said. "It's like the light inside me went out." Neil shook his head. "It's not gone, it's just buried deeper now. You gave too much. Now you have to grow." That night, Inky wandered alone through the ruins. He came upon a cracked fountain, dry for decades. He knelt beside it and touched the stone.
"Please,"
he whispered.
"I need to be more."
The medallion sparked. Suddenly, the ground trembled, the air shifted. The fountain erupted, not with water, but with a small, swirling flame. It hovered above Inky's hand, warm, alive. A voice, his own yet not, echoed in his mind. "Light is not a gift, it is a choice. When the world burns, choose to bloom." The flame sank into his chest, and Inky rose, glowing softly from within, his breath visible like mist rising from hot stone. He didn't just hold the sun now, he had become part of it. The next day, Neil led them into an old broadcast tower hidden beneath a crumbling bridge. He had found it while scavenging, an old database still partially intact, powered by solar coils. With Solin's help, they pieced together fragments of Merc's story. File, subject Merc, designation, Control Unit 7B. Origin, Earth Preservation Initiative, year 2184. Status, hybrid, human-machine. Mission, prevent uncontrolled growth, maintain equilibrium, suppress unauthorized biological activity. A recorded voice played next. It was Merc, years younger, fully human, speaking into a video log. They told me nature was chaotic, that emotion led to extinction. I believed them. So I offered myself to be remade, stronger, cleaner, without weakness. But now I see children planting flowers in ash, and I feel nothing. No joy, no sorrow, just control. Maybe I lost too much. The screen glitched and went black. Inky leaned back, stunned. "He wasn't always like this," he said. "He chose order over feeling. To save the world, he gave up its beauty." Neil nodded. "And now he thinks beauty is a threat." Inky stood, the medallion now softly glowing again. "Then we're the threat he fears most." They packed what little they had. Solin filled her new pouch with seeds. Neil grabbed a map etched on metal foil. Inky placed the flickering flame from the fountain into a clay orb, his first true power source beyond the medallion. They had no weapons, but they had hope. The three stood at the edge of a blackened subway tunnel that led toward the citadel of Grey, where the captured children were rumored to be held. Inky turned to the others. "We find them. We brought them home. And then we bring back the world." Solin nodded firmly. Neil smirked and flicked his slingshot. "Let's wake this world up." And with that, they descended into the dark. Chapter 12. Citadel of Grey. The tunnel swallowed them whole. No light, no sound but their footsteps. The only glow came from the solar medallion, pulsing faintly at Inky's chest, like a heartbeat trying not to fade. Neil walked ahead with a hand scanner salvaged from an old utility droid, checking for traps. Solin followed, silent and wide-eyed, tracing strange glyphs etched into the tunnel walls with her fingers, glyphs that pulsed under her touch. "Inky," Neil whispered, "I think this place used to be part of the old subway grid, before the fall." "Now it's something else," Inky said. "Now it's a throat, and we're walking into its stomach." After hours underground, they emerged through a cracked ventilation shaft onto a ridge overlooking the citadel of Grey. It wasn't just a building, it was a wound in the earth. Black towers spiraled from the ground like teeth. Antennas stabbed the sky, pulsing with anti-life energy. Fog churned around its perimeter like a living thing. The architecture was unnatural, half brutalist steel, half grown from petrified bone. Surveillance drones drifted in silence. At the heart of the citadel stood a giant obsidian dome, humming with electromagnetic fields. "That's where they're keeping them," Neil whispered. "The kids." "And that's where we go," Inky replied. The trio slipped through the perimeter using old service ducts and broken entry points. But inside, the citadel seemed wrong. Endless hallways, no sense of time. The walls whispered, echoing voices of doubt. As they moved deeper, Solin suddenly froze. "Inky," Neil said. "She's not breathing." Solin's eyes were wide, fixed on something only she could see. Her hands trembled.
I see them, she whispered. My family. They're alive.
Inky stepped forward, and suddenly he saw something too. The summit, his mother, Marley, Gesh, the golden fig tree, untouched, whole, home.
Inky!
Mika's voice echoed.
Come back! You were never meant to leave.
Inky stumbled forward. Then, crack! Neil slapped him across the face. Snap out of it. It's not real. The illusion shattered like glass. The hallway returned, dark and lifeless. Solin collapsed into Inky's arms, eyes wet.
They used our memories against us,
Inky said, breathless.
This place, it feeds on who we were.
As they caught their breath, the medallion dimmed. Suddenly, Solin lifted her hands, still shaking, and pressed her palms to the cold metal wall. Her eyes glowed faintly, silver blue. Glyphs lit beneath her fingers. A doorway hissed open. Neil stepped back. How did she? She's more than we thought, Inky said, watching her with awe. Solin gave a small, tired smile. They moved swiftly now, deeper into the citadel's lower levels. Alarms had not yet sounded, but the air grew heavier. They found the holding cells, dozens of them, built into the walls like honeycomb. Inside, the missing children huddled in silence, pale, frightened. Their eyes lit up when they saw Inky.
Inky!
One cried.
You came!
Shh, Neil whispered. We're gonna get you out. But before they could reach the control panel, touch that lock, and you won't leave with your limbs. A voice like steel grinding against bone. They turned. Merc stood at the far end of the corridor, his cloak dragged behind him like smoke. His left eye glowed blood red. His cybernetic arm unfolded into a blade. I let you live, Merc said, so you could feel hope again, so it would hurt more when I took it. Inky stepped forward. Then take me. Let them go. Merc tilted his head. No. Then, without warning, he struck. A blast of grey energy surged forward. Inky raised his hands. The solar medallion pulsed brighter than ever. A shield of light enveloped the children, but Inky was blasted backward. Neil darted to the panel, hands flying across buttons. Solin, I need your hand. She pressed her palm to the glyph lock. The cell doors hissed open. Run! Neil screamed. The children poured out. Merc roared, surging forward. Inky stood again, blood dripping from his lip. Not this time. The flame inside Inky burned hotter than before, shaped not by strength, but by sacrifice. The fire leapt from his chest, curling around his arms. The air shimmered. He slammed his palms to the floor. Roots exploded from beneath the citadel, crashing through steel, tearing up walls, wrapping around Merc's legs. But Merc's body adapted. Blades spun from his arms, severing the vines. He tore free, sparks flying. Neil grabbed the last of the children. Inky, we have to go. Solin looked back once, then disappeared into the escape shaft. Inky turned to Merc. "This isn't the end." "No," Merc hissed. "It's the beginning." The escape tunnel collapsed behind them as they fled into the underground river system. The air turned damp and full of moss. They had rescued the children, but Merc now knew the threat Inky posed, and the war for the Earth had officially begun. Chapter 13. Ashlight Rebellion. The river carried them through winding tunnels beneath the ruins. The current was swift, but the air was warm and sweet, filled with the scent of moss, minerals, and something else. Life. They emerged into a canyon hidden deep within the spine of the old Earth, a place untouched by the machines. Ashlight. A settlement built into the cliffs, overgrown but alive. Trees stretched between rusted towers like bridges. Glowing vines wrapped ancient ruins. Wind turbines spun lazily above domed gardens. And in the center of it all stood a giant tree, charred at its base but blooming golden at the top. Rebels gathered at the edge of the riverbank, weapons raised. But when they saw the rescued children and Inky glowing faintly under the moonlight, the tension faded. "Lower your arms," said a woman with silver locks and copper armor. "The prophecy lives." They were welcomed into a great hall carved from stone and vine, lit by lanterns powered by sunlight collectors. The children were given food and clean water, blankets, stories. Laughter returned, cautiously. The leader introduced herself as Ida, a former Earth Guardian, once a scientist, now a warrior. She had fought Merc before, barely survived. Ida studied Inky. "You're younger than I expected." "I'm stronger than I look," he said, weary but sure. She smiled. "Good, because you've stirred the hornet's nest." That evening, Ida gathered them in the Echo Room, where the walls were carved with glowing roots, each root telling a piece of the world's forgotten history. She explained how Merc was once a man named Elian Merc, a brilliant mind who believed that Earth could only survive by removing human unpredictability. He merged with the machines, shut down ecosystems, and built the Citadel to sterilize the world. "He called it a reset," Ida said, "but he never understood. Earth was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be alive." Only Ashlight remained untouched, a sanctuary hidden by old Earth tech, shielded from Merc's network. "We waited," she said, "for someone who could bring the sun back." Inky looked down at the medallion, now pulsing steadily. "I'm not just bringing it back," he said. "I'm learning how to use it." In the days that followed, Inky trained with Ida and the Ashlight elders. He learned to channel solar fire into shapes, not just blast, not just blast. He learned to channel over ire, not just blast into shapes. Days that followed, tendrils, even healing warmth. Powers began to awaken too. She could read the memory of plants and open ancient locks. Newing sharper, faster, and more dangerous. The rescued children helped too, planting, building, learning. Ashlight began to grow, but so did the danger. One night, a message flickered onto a restored satellite screen in Ashlight Square. It was Merc, his red eye burning. To the rebels hiding in rot, your chosen child cannot save you. The grey is absolute. The light will die, and with it, your last hope. The message ended with a single flickering phrase. I am coming. The crowd murmured. Inky stood at the center, the flame beneath his skin glowing brighter. Then let him come, he said. We're not hiding anymore. That night, plans were drawn on roots and stone. Ashlight would rise, the grey would fall. And Inky June, the boy who held the sun, would become more than a symbol. He would become a leader of the Ashlight Rebellion. Chapter 14. Roots of the Storm. Ashlight stirred before dawn. Torches flickered, boots tightened, tools sharpened. For the first time in years, the sanctuary was preparing not to hide, but to fight. Inky stood at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the canyon below. The wind carried the scent of soil, steam, and thunder. The storm was coming, not from the sky, but from them. Neil approached with a scrap metal map stretched across a cloth drumhead. The target's here, he said, pointing to a glowing triangle etched into the steel. Merc's primary grey core. It's draining all the surrounding regions, sucking the life out like a parasite. Inky nodded. Then we cut the root. Inky, Neil, and Solin, joined by 3 Ashlight rebels, descended into the Forgotten Belt, a strip of wilderness long devoured by the grey. They moved fast, hidden beneath cloaks made of woven, light-absorbing moss. Inky's medallion glowed just faintly enough to guide them. Solin walked barefoot, her fingers brushing ruined leaves, sensing direction like a compass of feeling. Every step deeper into the belt, the plants grew thinner, the color faded, sound vanished. Even their memories of where they came from began to feel distant. Why can't I remember what breakfast tasted like? One rebel asked. Neil growled, It's the grey. Solin stopped. Her hands trembled. She pointed ahead. There was no mistaking it now. The seedless zone. At the edge of a massive crater, the earth went dead. Nothing grew. Nothing moved. Not even dust stirred. It wasn't just barren. It was blank. All around them, the world seemed erased. No vines, no insects, no roots, no decay, Inky said. Like the planet was scrubbed clean. These aren't just dead zones, Neil whispered. They're memory voids. Inky stepped to the edge. The medallion dimmed. His inner flame pulsed erratically. And then he saw it. At the center of the crater, a metallic spire, black and jagged, humming with unnatural power. The grey core. We move fast and hard, Inky said. Neil, take the east ridge. Solin, come with me. They launched into motion. Neil sabotaged power lines using electric seeds created by Ashlight engineers. Two rebels distracted the grey sentinels, hunched, four-legged machines with sensor masks and bone-white plating. Inky sprinted across the dry basin, the air scorching his lungs. Solin pressed a hand to the ground and murmured. A faint pulse spread from her fingers, memory returning to the land in tiny bursts. "We're waking it up," she said softly. At the core's base, Inky pressed his palms together. The flame within him surged, brighter than ever. "Let there be growth," he whispered. He slammed his hands into the earth. Roots exploded from beneath the crater. They weren't normal vines. These were gold-threaded, sharp and radiant, connected to the sun's will. They wrapped around the grey core, cracking its plating. Solin joined in, tracing glyphs into the stone. Memories bloomed. Ghost images of forests long gone shimmered for moments in the air. Then, an explosion. The core began to rupture. "Go!" Inky shouted. The team retreated just as the structure collapsed into itself, sending a pulse of restoration energy into the land. The crater filled with wind, scent, and light. Grass returned. Clouds formed. The color came back to the sky. But so did something else. As Inky reached the ridge, he collapsed, his body overwhelmed by the release of power. And in that moment, he saw Merc. Not in front of him, inside him. A vision. Merc stood alone in a ruined lab, surrounded by dead flowers. "I wanted to save it," he said to no one. "But it was too wild, too human." He stared at his own reflection, half flesh, half machine. "So I buried it all." Inky gasped, sitting up. Neil knelt beside him. "You okay?" "No," Inky whispered. "But I will be." The rebels returned to Ashlight with news of success. Cheers rang out. For the first time, the world had pushed back. But Inky knew this was just the beginning. He stared at his hands, still glowing. And deep inside him, a fire had begun to storm. Chapter 15. The Sky Remembers. Ashlight was no longer just a sanctuary. It had become a heartbeat, a rhythm pulsing against the stillness of a dying world. As Inky watched the garden below sway in warm wind, a sudden crackle rang out across the village, static from the comm tower, long thought dead. "Incoming signal," called one of the engineers. "It's bouncing from high orbit. This isn't Merc, it's older." The crowd gathered as an old analog monitor lit up for the first time in years. A flickering image appeared, a circular emblem, the solemn station insignia. A voice followed, broken, warped. "If anyone is still listening, survivors. Sky 3 still breathes. Knowledge. Light. Hurry." Then silence. Ida stepped forward, eyes wide. "Solemn Station? It's still up there." "What's solemn?" Inky asked. "The last sky sanctuary.
a floating vault. Before Merc turned, Earth's elders sent data, seeds, and survivors into orbit. We thought it was lost. Inky turned to Solin and Neil. Then we go up. Preparation. Using ancient lift technology recovered from Ashlight's archives, a launch platform was unearthed, overgrown, hidden beneath root systems, protected by vines and glyph seals. Neil tinkered with the remaining engines. Solin awoke navigation glyphs with a brush of her fingers. Inky meditated in the quiet room, drawing solar power inward. Preparing. Before they left, the people of Ashlight painted their names on the hull of the shuttle, not just as passengers, but as a message. We still rise. Solemn Station. The journey was brief, jarring, and brilliant. As they broke the atmosphere, Earth shrank below, pale and scarred. Stars blinked into clarity. Solemn Station floated above the clouds, scarred, tilted, but intact. Dozens of solar sails reached outward like petals. One side of the station was overtaken by mechanical growth, cold, grey, and pulsing. Merc's corruption made it this far, Neil muttered. Inside, gravity hummed low. They wandered ancient halls, library domes, arboretums turned to stone, and AI cores flickering with half-dead memory. Solin placed her hand on a console. A projection flared to life, the history of the Earth, before the grey. They watched cities bloom, collapse, and vanish. They saw Merc, once a leader, choose silence over song. They saw the sun dim. But at the center of the station, a vault, still sealed. Inside, seeds, history, DNA, hope. Inky pressed the solar medallion to the lock. It opened. The light filled them, and far below, Merc felt it. They've awakened the sky. And he prepared to strike. Chapter 16. Merc's Eclipse. The sky darkened over Ashlight. At first, it seemed like a storm, but the clouds didn't swirl. They marched, columns of ash and thunder, pushed by wind that was not wind. Machines. From the jagged horizon, Merc's army rose. Enforcers, swarms, biomech beasts shaped like spiders and birds, metal stitched with bone. Above them hovered black-winged drones, silent and watching. At the front, towering above all, stood Merc, his body plated in obsidian armor, a crimson blade extended from one arm, and on his back, a stolen solar panel from a fallen sanctuary. Burn the roots, shatter the sun, erase the bloom. His voice echoed across the canyon. Yet as he stood overlooking Ashlight, a flicker, small, nearly imperceptible, passed through his eye. The human one. His gaze paused on the garden, the great tree, the laughter drifting from the walls. Something, a memory, pressed against his programming, a voice from deep within. You planted once too. You believed once. Merc's jaw clenched. He turned away quickly, as if shaking off a dream. The synthetic side of his brain surged, recalibrating. Emotion spike detected. Suppression initiated. This is necessary, he said aloud, to himself. And still, His hand trembled. The people of Ashlight prepared. Ida drew a blade from the great tree's base, glowing with carved glyphs of protection. Rebels lit solar torches. Inky stood at the cliff's edge, medallion glowing like a second sun. Neil tightened his gloves. Solin pressed seeds into her palm. This would not be a fight to survive. This was a fight for everything.
Chapter 17. The Bloom War. At dawn, a strange stillness cloaked Ashlight. It wasn't silence, it was waiting. 1,000 breaths held in the roots of trees, in the tremble of petals, in the soil that had only just remembered what it meant to live. Then the tremble came, not from thunder or the sky, but from below. A mechanical hum, a vibration in the bones of the earth. The gray had returned. From the canyon's edge they came, wave after wave, Merc's army. Metal-bodied enforcers with red glowing eyes, skittering drones shaped like vultures, towers with legs that walked like beasts. Behind them all, the obsidian figure of Merc himself, solar blade drawn, cape fluttering like a shadow sewn from ash. Burn the roots, shatter the sun, erase the bloom. His voice echoed like falling stone. Inky stood at the edge of Ashlight, his solar medallion glowing golden at his chest. He looked back at Solin and Neil. Ready? Solin pressed her hand into the soil, glyphs dancing at her fingertips. I was born ready. Neil adjusted the charge on his solar sling. Let's plant a war. Then Inky stepped forward. He raised his hand, and the earth answered. The canyon exploded with light. Roots tore through the ground, slamming into metal. Giant sunflowers turned like cannons, releasing bursts of blinding pollen. Tree branches bent low, forming bridges for rebels to charge across. It wasn't just a defense, it was a bloom. Inky leapt from the ridge, riding a beam of bark and light down into the fray. His hands blazed with solar energy, every strike leaving trails of golden fire. He swung a vine like a whip, ripping apart drone wings. Solin wove barriers from living light, protecting children and elders as they escaped into the tunnels. Neil climbed onto the back of a mech hound and planted a bloom grenade in its neck. As he leapt away, the machine erupted in a spray of petals and gears. Above them, the great tree of Ashlight pulsed with life, sending waves of energy through its roots, awakening groves, valleys, and even ruins long thought dead. For every machine that fell, a blossom bloomed in its place. From a high cliff, Merc watched. His red eyes scanned, but his human eye lingered. He saw children fight beside flowers. He saw rebels use seeds as weapons. He saw Inky, blazing, fearless, free. A tremor ran through his hand, a memory of a field he once tended, of a girl who once gave him a sunflower, of a time before the gray. Emotion spike detected, his neural system warned. Ignore. But he couldn't. You planted once, a voice whispered from the dark of his mind. You believed once. Merc turned his blade downward, and for a heartbeat, he did not strike.
Just as a battalion of sky drones descended toward Ashlight's heart, Inky raised both hands and called down a beam from the real sun, not just the medallion's echo, but the sky itself. The clouds parted, the drones melted in its light. The earth sang. And Merc's systems, saturated in darkness for so long, flinched at the brightness. They've awakened the sky. Chapter 18. The Breaking of Merc. The battlefield burned with sunlight and machine fire. Inky charged forward through the chaos, fire at his heels, the ground blooming behind him. His body was cracked with light. Every step shook the earth. Rebels rallied behind him. Ashlight's roots lashed out like the earth itself was fighting for its children. And then, in the center of the storm, he saw him. Merc. Clad in obsidian, cape torn, red eye glowing with cold precision. But something in his stance, tilted, hesitant, betrayed the war inside him. Inky rose on a pillar of solar wind, standing across from Merc atop the canyon wall. The world below paused, as if breathless. "It ends now," Inky said. "You threaten everything," Merc replied, voice low. "Order, stability, the silence that kept us from extinction." "No," Inky said. "You silenced the world to keep it from healing." Without another word, Merc raised his arm and unleashed a wave of grey energy. Inky met it with golden fire. The clash split the sky in half. The ground shattered. Time folded. The canyon lit up like a second sunrise. When the storm cleared, the two stood still, battered, trembling. Inky fell to one knee, exhausted. Merc stepped forward, blade raised, ready to strike. But he froze. His hand shook, the blade lowered. For a moment, Merc's human eye flickered. "Why won't you fight to finish me?" he asked. "Because I see who you were," Inky replied. "You weren't trying to kill the world. You were trying to protect it, the only way you knew how. And I failed." "No," Inky said gently. "You forgot that the earth doesn't need silence. It needs song. It needs chaos. It needs growth. You can still be part of that. You don't have to fight anymore. You can heal too." Merc's voice wavered. "I don't know how." Inky stepped forward, placing a hand over the remains of Merc's chest plate, right where his human heart once beat. "Then let me help you remember." There was no light this time, no explosion, just warmth. A pulse of memory, emotion and truth passed between them. Of trees, of laughter, of dirt under fingernails, of love, of loss, of the sun on real skin. Merc stumbled backward. His systems surged, code glitched. But he didn't strike. I want to believe you," Merc whispered. "Then start by not running." A long silence. Finally, Merc turned his face to the sky, where the stars blinked like old friends. "I can't stay. Not yet." "Then go, but come back when you're ready." Merc gave no answer. He turned and walked into the smoke, half man, half machine, and for the first time in years, half unsure.
Chapter 19. Seeds of Mercy. Ashlight burned in places, but it still stood. Smoke drifted through the treetops, and the great tree at the center of the canyon had lost some of its leaves, but its golden branches still reached upward like arms in prayer. The people gathered around the main square as Inky emerged from the canyon's edge, clothes torn, eyes heavy, but alive. Solon was the first to run to him. Neil followed close behind. "Inky!" Neil yelled. "You're alive!" "I almost wasn't," Inky said with a tired smile. But the light held. Over the next few days, Ashlight began to heal. Inky used what energy remained to nurture the roots that had burned. Solon sang silently to the soil, coaxing memory back into the land. Children replanted vines. Adults rebuilt the fallen outer walls with timber and stone. But something had changed in the people's hearts, the way they looked at the sky, the way they spoke Inky's name. He wasn't just their protector anymore. He was their bridge between past and future, between silence and song. While clearing the debris of the echo room, Solon stumbled upon a chamber long sealed by vines and dust. Inside she found a mural, ancient and glowing, etched in spiral glyphs across the walls. The mural told a story. A child born of green fire, a world silenced by machines, a seed carried through darkness, a flame held not in hand, but in heart. She called Inky and Neil to see. As Inky stared at the mural, the solar medallion at his chest pulsed with deep, steady warmth. Ida entered behind them, jaw clenched. "I always thought it was just a myth." "What is it?" Inky asked. Ida exhaled. "It's the original prophecy, not of war, not of destruction, but of mercy." The true prophecy. Ida translated the old glyphs aloud. "The world will fall not by rage, but by forgetting. And one will rise not to fight, but to remind. To heal the wound not by sword, but by seed." Inky stepped closer. The last line burned gold as he touched it. "He who holds the sun must plant it in the heart of his enemy. And wait." Neil's voice was quiet. "It was never about killing Merc." Inky nodded. "It's about helping him remember." Later, by the stream that fed the garden, Inky sat with Solon. She rested her head on his shoulder, drawing a spiral on a stone with her finger. "I don't know if he'll come back," Inky whispered, "but I believe he wants to." Solon nodded, and then, for the first time, she spoke aloud. "He will." Inky turned to her, eyes wide. "You spoke." She smiled gently. "You lit the silence." That night, beneath a sky no longer gray, Inky stood alone in the garden. The stars above shimmered brighter than he'd ever seen. He reached into the soil and planted a single seed, the last golden fig. A promise, a prayer, a beginning. Far away, in the outer shadows of the broken world,
Merc stood alone, hand pressed to his chest, feeling a pulse that wasn't code. A heartbeat.
Chapter 20. When the Earth Sang. The soil hummed. It was faint, barely a murmur at first, but every root in Ashlight felt it. A vibration not from footsteps or machines, but from something deeper. The Earth was awakening. Not violently, not in rage, in song. Inky knelt near the fig tree he had planted the night before. Its trunk had grown thicker. Its leaves reached toward the sky like it remembered what stars were. He placed a hand on the soil. The song was there, a rhythm like a heartbeat and breath. It wasn't music, it was memory. All around him, people began to feel it too. Children stopped to listen. Elders wept without knowing why. The earth was beginning to remember itself. But not everyone understood what it meant. Some of Ashlight's council gathered in the echo room. "If Merc returns, he'll bring war," one elder warned. "We should strike first," said another, "before he regroups." Inky stood at the center, quietly, until they finished. "No," he said. "We wait." "Wait? For what?" "For him." The room fell silent. Ida narrowed her eyes. "You think he'll come back changed?" "I know he wants to," Inky said, "but he's afraid." "Then you risk everything on hope?" Inky nodded. "I always have." That night, Solin woke from a dream and rushed to Inky's side. She carried a shard of crystal from the prophecy chamber, etched with a spiral. "I saw it," she said. "The end is not fire, it's choice." She placed the shard into the heart of the garden's soil. It began to glow, and the earth sang louder. At dawn, a figure appeared at the edge of the canyon, not surrounded by machines, not armed. Merc. He walked slowly, one arm still armored, one hand trembling. The rebels readied weapons, the alarms rang. Inky raised his hand. "Let him through." Merc entered Ashlight with nothing but silence. He stood across from Inky at the center of the garden. "I don't know who I am anymore," he said. Inky stepped closer. "Then let's find out together." Merc looked down at the fig tree. "I can still hear it," he whispered. "The world singing." "It never stopped," Inky said. "You just stopped listening." Merc fell to his knees. "I want to remember." At that moment, the great tree bloomed in full for the first time in centuries. Golden leaves, crystalline fruit. The birds returned. The wind danced again. And above them, for the first time in generations, the clouds broke. The real sun shone down. Not fire, not power, warmth. The earth was alive again. It didn't happen all at once. The grey lifted slowly, like sleep from tired eyes. Rivers returned to their beds. Forests rose from cracked soil. Birds built nests in machines that no longer moved. The world exhaled. Ashlight became a sanctuary once more,
not hidden, but honored. No longer the last spark of resistance, but the first flame of rebirth. The people of Ashlight gathered at the foot of the great tree. Ida held a scroll made from living bark, etched with the names of all who stood for the earth and those who were lost to its silence. Inky stood before the crowd, the solar medallion glowing like a second sun over his heart. Around his neck, now braided with golden thread, hung the last seed, smooth, small, and pulsing with quiet warmth. He held it in his hand. "Where will you plant it?" Neil asked. Inky looked out across the horizon, then upward toward the sky. "Not here," he said. "Not in soil." Later that evening, Inky met Merk beneath the tree. The former warden of the Grey looked different. His armor had dulled, his red eye no longer glowed, and on his back, instead of weapons, he carried tools, used for planting, for mending. "I don't deserve peace," Merk said. "No," Inky replied, "but peace doesn't come because you deserve it. It comes when you're ready to protect it." Merk nodded. "And the seed?" Inky smiled. "I know where it belongs." The Vale Gate shimmered again open for the first time since Inky left. Elder Jaru stood at its edge, robes flowing, eyes shining with pride. "You've done what no one else could," he said, "and now it's time to come home." Marley was there too, jumping up and down. "Hurry up, Slowpoke! Mama made stone fruit stew!" But Inky didn't walk through the gate alone. At his side stood Solin. She held his hand, barefoot, eyes wide with awe at the glowing archway. She wore a new robe made of ashlight silk, embroidered with spirals and stars. "You're sure?" Inky asked her softly. She nodded. "Where you go, I'll grow." He placed the last seed in her hand. "We plant it together," he said. And together they stepped through the veil, leaving the wounded world behind and returning to the sacred land that had been waiting for its son to come home. Years later, on a hill in the sacred homeland, a tree grows where no tree had ever grown before. Its leaves shimmer with gold and silver. Its roots glow beneath the surface. Children play in its shade. Birds sing songs not heard since before the fall. And beneath its branches, two figures sit. One, the boy who held the sun. The other, the girl who never spoke until the world began to listen. They don't speak now either. They just sit together as the earth sings. The end.